This is the Authentic Change Podcast, and I am Mike Horne. Authenticity reflects what we want from each other and our organizations: open communication, trust, community, fun, and opportunity. I want to help you to do your best in your personal and professional relationships. This podcast delivers expertise, insights, and approaches on authentic leadership, to live your purpose, to lead from your values, to establish connected relationships, to steward people and culture change, to build and sustain prosperity, and to open doors and possibilities. This podcast will assist you in paving the way forward to personal, team, and organizational prosperity. Welcome to another episode of Authentic Change with Mike Horne. I am absolutely beyond delighted. I am floored delighted today to have as our guest Denise Cooper. I feel so fortunate getting to know Denise and hearing about her application and what it means to the world of leadership, to the world of bringing more of who you are to what you do. But first, let me say a few words about Denise Cooper, who is the founder and CEO of Remarkable Leadership Lessons. And Denise has a book by the same title, Remarkable Leadership Lessons. I'll let her talk about that as we move forward. But it's a company that she's had for at least 10 years, and it assists C-suite, senior level business leaders, and managers in raising their game as contributors to profitability. She serves as an executive coach and keynote speaker. And Denise has a proven process for grooming diverse candidates for succession, which she does through one-on-one customized development plans, professional assessments, and time-proven case studies. And this is the part, I think, where we talk about application. But again, I think you'll learn more about Denise in our discussion today. And I would encourage you to purchase her book, Remarkable Leadership Lessons, Change Results One Conversation at a Time. And Denise, let's start our conversation today. Again, so delighted to have you. Can you say a few words about yourself to our audience?
Well, hi, Mike, and hello to your audience. And I think you said it all. I'm one of the rare people who absolutely loves my work. Besides this and digging in my garden, that's kind of the love of my life right now. So.
Denise, I so appreciated you opening our conversation today by saying hi. If there's one lesson that I've been taught, and I think I've incorporated because I've learned it, it's that the best way to promote inclusion is to begin by saying hello. It's our oldest technology, but just to say hello to someone is an act of inclusion. And you demonstrated that power today. So I appreciate that so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I didn't know that. So thank you for educating me on that one. I just think it's, my mother's lessons of don't be rude. Even if you don't like the person, you can always be kind and greet them.
Right. I learned it from two of my colleagues, Fred Miller and Judith Katz, who said, this is our oldest technology. Just say hello.
Yeah.
And you can start a conversation and figure out where you are and where the other person is, and hopefully build that into something that's both productive and meaningful. Denise, let's start by, what are some of these remarkable leadership lessons that you could share with the audience in the short amount of time that we have together? What are some of the most important lessons?
Well, I think the first lesson is that leadership really isn't about influencing others. It's about understanding yourself and how you impact others. Somewhere we have the heroic leader model where people are supposed to come in and, by God, I've got the answer and let's move forward and, that kind of thing. And, today, particularly in these times when people are really overwhelmed and overburdened and don't have enough time to think, it's important for us to realize that the first lesson of leadership is really about knowing yourself and understanding how you impact other individuals. Because when you're overburdened and overwhelmed and can't think, that shows up as uncertainty to other people. They may not understand what you're doing, because the second lesson that we have to understand is nobody can read your mind. Your intentions are invisible. Your intentions, your desire, as good as they are. And I believe everybody wakes up every morning with one goal on their mind. And that is to be a good person, to do the best work that they want to do. But that does not necessarily translate into our behavior. And that's where coaching, advising, my being a thought partner with people helps them understand what is the impact of their behavior on others. Is it really inspiring? Is it clear? So that other people know exactly, particularly if you're a leader, do they really understand exactly what the result is that you're trying to achieve? Not the process you want them to go through, but can they repeat back to you what exactly it is that they are, when it's all done, said, what does it look like?
So a lot of this, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
A lot of this begins with knowing yourself. And that's, the ancient Greeks thought about integrity that way, is to thine own self be true, right? And that's, and find that in the Greco-Roman tradition in so many ways. But what do you think gets in the way sometimes of us really getting to know ourselves? Because I think I've encountered one or two people who don't seem, at least I don't feel, I don't experience them as being genuine or authentic.
Well, there's two questions that you've asked, because the first one is, what gets in the way of us knowing ourselves?
Right.
And I think it's because we don't really seek feedback. We're not curious about how we are showing up for other people. Does our intention actually show up and manifest in a way that other people can follow us, other people understand what they need to do, and that they do it from a place of feeling like they not only belong, but they can show up as who they need to be? Then the second part of your question was really about, I've met some people who I just didn't kind of trust them. You didn't say the word trust, but that's basically what you're saying. And that is because we don't know how to read the other person, because they're doing something, saying something that makes it feel like, there's a hidden agenda in here. And oftentimes leaders use a selling mode and a bargaining chip. Hey, I really kind of need you to do da 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 da. And so just by setting it up that way, you feel like you might be getting ready to be taken advantage of, right?
Right. Selling, telling, yelling. I've seen managers of all those stripes, right?
Yeah. And so that's kind of what a lot of people use as their first instrument to be a leader, is that I have to sell you on this. I need to tell you how to get it done. They don't spend a lot of time telling you what the end result is going to be. And what that does is if I'm telling you everything you need to do, then that, even if you didn't say it, it makes me feel like you believe I'm incompetent or incapable.
Yeah.
Well, if you feel that way, then, why would I follow you? Why would I be inspired by you? And if you don't mind, let me tell you a quick story.
I don't mind at all.
Illustrates that. So I was a younger HR person. I've been in this HR 25 years, I admit to, but I was young at it. I was a HR manager in a plant level, and I had a boss who was an English major. And, he was very good at writing. And one of the things that I had to learn, and anybody who worked for this particular company, is we had to grow up writing our own legal briefs. And I was the head of the union. My focus was on the union agreements, negotiations, et cetera, et cetera. Well, every time I'd send him something, he would red pen it. He would send it back marked up. He'd edit it. He put all of these red lines and the stuff that the emails he'd send me back about, watch your grammar. Well, it didn't take me long. I'd say maybe a month of doing that to me, that I just stopped trying. And so about a month and a half later, he comes in for his coaching conversation with me. Denise, I understand, what's going on. It seems like the quality of your work is not getting better. We need to really talk about that. And I just looked at him and I said, you have to understand, you're going to red pen everything I've ever done. So I don't think it's ever going to be there. So why should I try? the look on his face was priceless. And what I tell leaders now is be careful what you're teaching people, because we teach each other how to be with each other every day. So the things that you love to do, it may be something that may be teaching somebody else that they don't need to do it, or it's not worth them trying. Unless you're a people pleaser, there was, I don't know anybody who's going to stick to the red pen.
Yeah, I learned that lesson, as a teacher after my first course. Put away the red pen. It wasn't helping my students. So clearly it's a lesson that you learn because of feedback. And maybe that goes back to the two key points that you raise for leadership. One is understanding yourself and this impact on others. And when I think about the impact on others, I equate it to your words around intention. And I guess some behavioralists believe that your intentions really don't mean anything. It's all about your behaviors and how you show up. Yeah. I'm not sure I would go that far, right? I hate to, separate the, things into either or. And I have found it to be a helpful mechanism to focus on behaviors, to focus on an application that, what can I do with my good intent? How do I show up with it? So that when I think about integrity and, to thine own self be true, but I think about integrity as congruency, the ability that my words and actions match, and even better, that my words, actions, and thoughts align.
Yep.
And I bet you're doing a lot of that in your intentional work with leaders. So yes. How do you start to accomplish that, Denise, for someone to say, hey, maybe I need to let go of some of these patterns I've had, or maybe I need to embrace or adopt some new patterns in order to bring more of who I am, in order of understanding myself so that I can understand others better?
Well, we start with whatever the problem is that's in facing them, because that's where their interests lie. But the thing that I think I bring to the table with them is this idea of being a thought partner. So you can't read somebody else's mind, but I can give you other perspectives based on my experience that will help broaden what you're encountering and what it looks like, and give you more opportunities and options that maybe you haven't seen, because you might be emotionally connected, tied to a particular answer. And we all are, we all want to be perfectionists to some level. Some people are stronger than others. And our need to be showing up perfectly sometimes gets in the way of us being able to be a good leader, of good influence. So helping people to be curious, because if you read all of the leadership books, they all say, get curious, right? But being curious is really hard because, we got to get stuff done and we got to do it quickly. What do you mean? I need to be curious. I need to tell these folks to get this stuff done. And that's kind of the perception we go to, because we think that we don't have enough time to do it right. And so being curious is stepping back.
It really requires a big belief in people and the goodness of people. To your point that you believe, I believe that most people wake up wanting to do their best in the world. And we have to ask ourselves, well, what gets in the way of that, of people fulfilling that mission to be their best at what they do? And I think it's a lot of horrible managers.
Yeah.
And I recall, it was interesting that you mentioned.
Wait, well, I hate to interrupt.
No, you're not.
I think it's horribly trained managers.
Yes. A great way of reframing that. And we can get to that. I was thinking about your comments around union activity, and early in my career, I was involved in labor relations and did grievance handling, midterm contract negotiations, sat on the negotiating team for the employer. And I realized that a steady diet of that would not allow me to fulfill a destiny that I thought people could do some great things together. At that time, I still believed that organizations were paragons of virtue. The people were all about purpose and teamwork and collaboration. I was young at that point. And now, what makes organizations interesting and what drives my energy and my passion now is to make organizations, or at least teams, all that they can be. Because to your earlier points, if I don't trust you, I won't think you have integrity. And if I don't think you have integrity, I won't trust you.
It's a loop.
It's a loop there. Mm-hmm. So how do you work through those loops, right? The good intentions. I find that so many behaviors, we have because they have, even if they're not behaviors that we particularly like, these behaviors have helped us to be successful.
Yeah.
So how do we begin to, strip away, add on, however you want to think about it, new behaviors that will really make a difference, not only in our personal life, but in the lives of those with whom we work.
Small steps. It's interesting because we want to get it over with and get it done very quickly. And anyone who's ever been on a diet or tried to, change a habit or something knows that it takes a while of constantly doing it and living with failure. And we don't like living with failure, particularly in the workplace, because the systems penalize us. HR systems penalize us for failing. They don't reward us for risk taking. They don't reward us for process improvement per se and incremental change. It rewards us for dramatic change. And so we've got two issues in the workplace. One is naturally changing a system, changing the way we work together, changing how we intervene with each other takes time. And it takes one step. And the first thing I tell people all the time is admit that you're in a learning mode with the people around you. It's because you need to reset their thinking to allow you to take some risk and do some things different. If you don't reset their perception of who you are, then they're never going to let you do that, because then the gossip takes over, the uncertainty takes over, the lack of trust takes over. Because as humans, innately, what we want, what we thrive for, what we want the most is control and predictability. And if you are not the person that I've known you to be, I can't predict who you're going to be. I'm therefore going to feel at risk with you. And if I feel at risk with you, my trust goes down. My awareness may go up, but my trust of you is going to go down. Control is about understanding exactly what it is you want, and then knowing that I can deliver those things to you. When we decide to go on these, many times we go to these classes and then we come back and we just start trying stuff, right? We start just kind of going out there. And the whole organization is kind of like, oh my God, you've been to that program, blah, 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 blah. Well, nowhere in that interaction that I just described did you explain to people what you were doing and why it was important for you to do, and how could they support you on your own personal growth.
About creating context.
There you go. Without context is a recipe for failure, certainly high frustration. And so that is the issue that I think most people do, is that they just don't label it or give the context for which they are doing, and then ask for the support to make it happen. We also get really ambitious when we start talking about it. So we say, you know what, I'm never going to be that bad leader again. I'm never going to manage those people that way, da, 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 da. And we forget the barriers that exist in the organization. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest barriers right now is this idea of we have to do more with less. Where in that statement, where in that business model do we ever go back and say, we've reached a breaking point? There is no more to get with less.
Yeah.
And we don't think about that. And we don't allow the organization, particularly those middle managers who are responsible for delivering the more, the ability to come back and say, we've reached our breaking point.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a dilemma or a conundrum. I'd have to sort that through. But, I think often what we find in life, or the lesson that we often hear, is that less is more. And yet in organizations, for-profit organizations, even not-for-profit organizations, it seems to operate at the antithesis, right? That we need more, always more, right? We need to, And some of that's driven by boards of directors. It's driven by the commercial and profitable environments that we need to operate in. But how do you start that mindset, Denise? How do you begin to make that shift to help a leader understand that sometimes, less is more?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to learn how to manage up,
right.
You should be managing up and you need to be managing outward. So when you get to be a leader, whatever that means, first line supervisor up, whatever it is, you really there's managing the people who report to you. But more importantly, it's really managing the people above you who hold the keys to resources and those other departments which you're competing for resources with. And too often we forget to tell people that if you're leading, we say leaders lead other people. Well, we're really talking about those people that are directly up under you or in your department. What we have to be is more inclusive. You have to get your boss on board of where's the capacity. I would much rather us stop saying get more with less and start asking the question, how do we build the capacity for more?
Right. And many of these things I think that you're suggesting though, are antithetical to the practice of contemporary management. Most people aren't taught to ask for support. Mm-hmm. I don't think most people are think about failing fast in order to learn. I don't think that many think about context as a way of understanding. I don't know what happened to you 5 minutes ago. I don't know what happened to you. I don't know what will happen to you 10 minutes from now. But what I do know is that you're in front of me right now, and that we're both together. So how do I signal that as a leader, Denise, to take on some of these traits that we might not characteristically think about in terms of managing, about asking for help, or asking for support, about practicing an ability to learn that includes failing?
Well, let me kind of slow you down a little bit because you mentioned something about the failing fast idea in here. And we have to remember that there's two things in organizations. One is it's the individual and the leader who's trying to get things done. The other is the HR systems that reward, recognize, and give permission, set the boundaries for what is permissible. Most companies go with the traditional 100 plus year old, and we have not changed HR in 100 years, idea that failure has to, at some point, goes into the performance issue. Very rarely are we recognizing on those performance reviews capacity building. We still are struggling with how to measure individual performance or collective performance, or should we be measuring either or both out of it? And we don't have those conversations. So if a leader, and I'm going to say this is the CEO, because this kind of permission has to start with the CEO. I know everybody wants to be a change agent in the middle of the organization, and you can be a change agent, but the CEO is really the one responsible for being an agent of change. He or she has to sit down with the HR people on one side and their management team on the other side and say, we need to build in the conversation context and the structure HR so that what we're doing is we're building capacity in our organization. So I don't want to hear any more of these euphemisms about failing fast, this, that, and the other. I want us to be able to measure building capacity. And it ought to look like people feeling like they're included, feeling like they belong, feeling like they can speak up in the organization. It should look like we are in new markets and that we are looking like, as an organization, representative of the communities we are privileged to do business in, as well as the people who we serve and areas that we do. It shouldn't, for U.S. markets, it shouldn't be U.S. or Western thinking. Diversity in America looks very different than diversity if you were in an African country, or you were in an Asian country, or you were in South America or a Latinx country. And so we need to be able to expand our thinking, expand the way we're talking about, not from a US-centric point of view if you're in America, or a Western point of view if you're in Europe, but to really understand the nuance of allowing people to bring forth what their questions are, to be curious, and set the context. What does it look like if we are constantly building capacity in our people and the capacity in our communities, the capacity in our customers and our stakeholders, so that everyone begins to understand that this organization is here for a purpose? If the CEO doesn't do that and get their HR systems on one side aligned, as well as the management team, particularly finance, aligned, then all you're doing is frustrating your organization, and you're frustrating yourself because you're not seeing things go forward.
So you speak about the topics of having being included in an organization, being feeling that you belong in the organization, that you can listen up, that you can speak up in an organization. What do you think prevents these changes from occurring more radically or more progressively in organizations? Because, you know, as an HR executive, I mean, having managed global teams around the world and sat on executive teams, there is a desire to, you know, how do people stack up? How do things roll? And often we're not, to your point, measuring, except in some surveys at sometimes, inclusion, belonging, and you know, speaking up. I mean, having the right environment for that. How do we start to bridge these differences or gaps between what is and what must be, I think, in order to survive?
Well, you know, how does behavior change happen anyway? It is about taking a stand. It is about making a decision. We're going to go down that road. Now, I get that the pre part of it is I've got to think about it. I've got to noodle about it. I've got to kind of, you know, do some research on what it looks like. Then why isn't HR actually sitting down thinking about this with the CEO? Why? Because HR in most companies is a paralegal department responsible for keeping everybody all the management team out of the orange shirts and jail. And that's not a bad thing. That is a function that has to occur in the organization. But what a CEO or a C-suite or executive really needs is a thought partner. And you can't always get a thought partner inside the system that is currently operating, because everyone is aligned to thinking. You have to bring in, just like we're talking about talent management, when you need different skill set in an organization, you begin to go out and look for something different. That's the reason why people like I exist, like you exist, because we are that confidential space that they can go and be wrong, be uncertain, be curious, be open, and they don't have to worry about their image. Because I care, don't be disrespectful, but I don't really care about your image, because my goal is to help you grow in your thinking around building capacity for your organization.
And that, I would assume, by building this capacity, it leads to greater productivity, greater results in whatever ways that we might see them. But what goes along with that capacity, or how do we begin to, build that capacity? I think some of it is sown in the seeds of your ideas around being curious, getting curious, and about understanding ourselves and the impact that we create on others. That is so important. And what creates those sort of epiphany moments or catalytic moments in your experience, that where you really find an executive who is, he, she, or they are willing to do both of those things, to understand more about who they are and to listen to others? What causes that? Does it have to be a crisis?
I don't know if it's a crisis, because crisis means it's happening now. But I think they see on the horizon. And the ones that I work with have a deep love for the organization they work for. They love the people, they love the products, they love the community. They feel a responsibility to serving these folks. And service is making sure they've got an ongoing organization that is capable of delivering what they promised to customers, shareholders, and employees. They see it as more than an obligation. It is a deep-seated, this is what I believe in. So that's the first step, is that they're understanding that if we keep going down this trail, we're going to run into some stuff. Then it is, how do I develop the courage, the heart, to stop the train? Because I've been very successful up until now. So why would I risk that? And so it really does come down to heart. They can begin. That's why, I love working with the people I do, because we can begin to explore those things, gain the courage, as well as get a picture of what it looks like. Simple things like, the hardest part for a CEO right now is data collection. And what does the data mean? So if I'll just take the idea of turnover, which is something HR can generally generate fairly well.
Generally.
Question.
I always say it becomes difficult to count once there's more than one person because you don't know, is that person contingent? Are they part-time? How do we make them equivalent? Yes. HR counting's not so easy.
Well, we like complexity because it makes us feel important.
Right.
But the reality is that you can have categories of people and understand. And I'll give you an example. I have an organization that made the decision pre-pandemic that they were going to have more part-time employees than full-time employees. Then pandemic hit, and guess who decided to leave?
Sure.
Full-time employees. And guess what? Part-time employees signed up for certain days, certain hours, and they don't want to work anymore. So now they've got a crisis in that area. So you find yourself in, how do we staff effectively when we set these policies in place? But I want to go back to turnover, because turnover is something that everybody worries about, or at least gets the number, right? You should be able to decide how much of turnover, the impact of turnover, is in your margins. Tighter your margins, the more turnover impacts, because that's a cost of doing work. And it's also an idea of capacity that takes out of your capacity. So some industries, the average is 150, 160% turnover. You don't have to get it down to zero, because there's value in not having it down to zero, but you could get it down to like 80. And depending on your company, that can be anywhere from 0.5% to 3 to 4% of your margin. And it would improve your margin from 0.5% to, in some companies, I've seen where they've improved that turnover space, where they've increased 3% on their margins, which is a lot in tight companies like grocery stores and retail outlets and stuff like that. Larger organizations may not be it. So you can think about it from that perspective. The other is that you can begin to measure. You don't have to measure your overall. You can start saying and identifying who are regrettable turnover. Who are the people that, man, when that person left, it was a huge hole when they left in my organization. And you can begin, instead of taking a whole big old, we need to do a 9-box on everybody. You could simply ask your leaders, who's the person who, if they left tomorrow, you would fall on your sword to keep them?
Well, and the question for talent is, what's a job offer you couldn't refuse? For the manager, who would you fall on your sword for the individual, what's an offer that you couldn't refuse? How do we create these environments where people are able to bring who they are and bring their best to the advantage of both employer and individual?
And I'll say that, to say to the audience, and one of the things I tell those CEOs all the time is, it isn't about money. Money is the reason why we say goodbye. It is not the reason we stay. The reason we stay is because we feel like what we do matters. And if you don't believe me, look at some of the best companies. I used to do the Pepsi and the Coke and all those companies. People say, oh, yeah, well, I can't compete with them. They pay, above scale. They paid at the 50% because they knew the environment and working for them was money onto somebody's idea. They created environments where people enjoyed coming to work. I will tell people all the time, you think teachers stay in teaching jobs because they get paid so much? No, they do because their desire, more than anything, is to impact the lives of children. We make teaching one of the toughest jobs in this country. And yet there are dedicated teachers who, through all the barriers that we put in place, do stellar work. Nonprofits do not pay the same as others. So there are lots of jobs or lots of companies that don't pay at market, but still get the kind of belonging and inclusion and impact from their people that companies that pay stellar salaries would kill to get.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I ran the Great Place to Work campaign for about 6 years in an organization that has been on the Great Place to Work list, I think, for at least 25 years, always in the top 10. Mm-hmm. And clearly, it's not about the rewards. It is about, in the social sciences, clear on that. Even in the most recent, research I've been reading in terms of in today's environment, with some people not enjoying, but having sustained work from home arrangements. Many of these same issues persist about, does my manager include me? Does my manager create a feeling of being in on things? Wages come up, near the bottom of the list.
Yeah. Do I know what I'm supposed to do? Do I understand what it takes to succeed? Do I have the tools to do my best and to succeed? Do I have teammates or colleagues who actually understand the impact of what they do and how it affects my lives?
Yeah, and you're so right. I mean, given that wages are often determined by the prevailing marketplaces in which you operate, when you go to a competitor, more or less, it's not going to be the salary that's going to be making the difference for you. It's going to be, what's the environment, what's the culture, what's the community. And I love these ideas, about understanding that community perhaps is more important or is equally important as culture.
And impact. And what we're seeing with, it's interesting because, every now and then a great survey will come up about, Gen Z, which is the newest entrance, that kind of 18 to 31, I think it is, generation here. And they are quick to quit, the job, right? They're quick to not be in there. They come and they don't know how to work. They don't, all of these things. And yet we stand around complaining about this generation. But if you actually sit and talk to them, what they want is to matter. What they want is to see action. So they want, when you say, oh yeah, we're a diverse and inclusive organization, and they look around and go, well, I don't see it. And you're certainly not treating me with respect. I may not know the job, but you're not treating me with respect that I could learn the job and I can have a career here. And that's what they want.
How people feel and how the environments that we create to make them feel certain ways is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you think about it. You got 150% turnover, 80% turnover. Does that sound like a place that you want people to stick around in and you're not doing anything? So again, what's the impact of your behavior? And what does it tell people around how they should trust you, and do they feel like they belong? Because we teach each other how to be with each other by the way we treat others.
Absolutely. It's all about the platinum rule, isn't it? That, to treat others as they would like to be treated, as they expect to be treated, and to bring your best, to offer yourself, to understand yourself, the person you are, so that you can engage in relationships. And at the core of really authentic leadership, relationships that build trust, relationships that foster communication, that create accountability and stewardship, and are also fun places to work where I don't, have a headache before I get there, where I can wake up and match my intention of wanting to do good with having an opportunity to do that in a place where I feel that. And that is maybe the job of remarkable leaders that you've taught us.
Absolutely. And that's what they're focused on. It's about capacity building. And then doing that is about inclusion and belonging. And I'll tell, if people, one thing is, short podcasts like this, we don't have the time to kind of dig deep as we want to. But in my book, I give short stories of where the leader was faced with, or an employee was faced with, having a bad leader who made some mistakes and didn't make them feel included, or a leader who just has someone and they're trying to improve their performance. They're trying to create a place where they're building organizational capacity. Short stories, good lessons. I recommend everybody, go out, get it, because we need examples. We need role models if we're going to change our behavior. We need to be able to see a way to the goal or the vision of what we're looking for.
Modeling the way, so important. And Denise Cooper, you are one of the people that helps all of us to do that, to model the way. Denise, as we begin to wrap up, if you were to offer, one or two pieces of advice on bringing your authentic self to work and to team life and organizational life, what might you suggest?
That's a tough question because it's so individualized for each individual. I think if we're speaking in huge generalities out of it is, I think you have to understand where your areas of safety are, because it's not about unfortunately, it's not always about bringing your full self as much as asking the question, where are the spaces and places that I can speak up?
So
and
amazing.
Speaking up.
And having people who can listen as well, right?
And every organization, I don't care how bad your organization is, there are spaces and places and people that you can speak up authentically, come with a solution, or they can help you think about it. No organization, I don't care how bad it is totally bad because it's made up of people.
Denise, we're so lucky to have you and your wisdom in our lives. And if our audience wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Oh, two easy ways. I would love for you, obviously, to connect with me on all the social media pieces, Denise Cooper Inc. or Coach D Cooper on Instagram, Twitter, those kinds of places. LinkedIn is Denise Cooper. You can find me there. And if you have a question, you can reach out on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, which is remarkableleadershiplessons.com. And there's a contact page in there. Just put your question in there. I answer questions all the time from people who just want a little bit of information, a little bit of guidance.
Okay, this is great. And Denise, thank you for that generous offer. So everyone knows how to get in touch with Denise Cooper. And that, I'd say the easiest way is to visit her at remarkableleadershiplessons.com. And you'll find links, ways to contact Denise and to take her up on her generous offer at remarkableleadershiplessons.com. It's just a wonderful vision. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's a wonderful blueprint and architecture for bringing more of who you are to what you do by understanding others. And Denise, thank you so much for your work in this world, for the time that you've spent with us. I'm so grateful to have you as a guest on Authentic Change.
Well, thank you goes both ways, not just to you, but to your listeners for indulging you and I in this conversation around where can you go, how can I get better, and how can I be a remarkable leader.
And again, folks, it's Denise Cooper, remarkableleadershiplessons.com. Thank you, Denise. Until the next episode of Authentic Change with Mike Horne, stay well. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll subscribe today and tell a friend about our show. If you're looking for hands-on help to increase your success through authentic change, or have a question you'd like to hear me answer here, please email me at mike@mike-horne.com.